Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. On a hot summer afternoon, Jonathan, a demanding and time-pressed millionaire, finds himself stranded on the side of a posh city road. His luxury car refuses to start, and every minute of delay seems to cost him dearly. Distraught, he spots a woman passing by with a calm, confident smile. She approaches, her simple bag slung over her shoulder and her hands covered in traces of oil and dust. It's Claire, an outstanding mechanic. Without question, she opens the hood, inspects the engine, and begins work. Her movements are quick and precise, each movement demonstrating rare expertise. Jonathan, used to having everything handed to him on a plate, watches silently, impressed despite himself. A few minutes later, the car is purring perfectly again. He breathes a sigh of relief and hands her a note to thank her, but she politely declines. Then his gaze falls on her hand, a sparkling ring, adorned with a diamond he immediately recognizes. His heart stops for a moment. This woman, so modest and focused on her task, is none other than the heiress to one of the city's greatest fortunes, and the cousin he thought unattainable for years. The surprise is complete. Jonathan, the millionaire accustomed to judging by appearances, realizes that true wealth and talent can be hidden where you least expect them. Claire smiles, as if she knows exactly the effect she has just produced, and disappears into the crowd, leaving Jonathan stunned and pensive, with a lesson in humility to ponder. The afternoon sun beat down hard on the palm-lined avenue. Jonathan, a millionaire in a hurry, drove his shiny, gleaming luxury car. His schedule was packed, and every minute wasted was costing him dearly. A crucial meeting with investors was awaiting him, and a delay could ruin millions of dollars in seconds. Suddenly, a shrill noise sounded from under the hood. The engine coughed faintly, emitted one last gasp, and then shut down completely. Jonathan, panicking, turned the key over and over again. Nothing. The metallic silence of the car seemed to mock him. "Not now," he whispered, stress rising as his breathing became rapid and ragged. He got out of the car, his forehead beaded with sweat. His fingers slid across the hot hood, betraying his annoyance. Other vehicles passed him, indifferent, and a feeling of frustration and vulnerability washed over him. He was used to everything being under control, but here, nothing was working. As he bent over the engine, inspecting the cables and components with a mixture of anger and impatience, he spotted a female figure in the distance. A woman was walking calmly toward him. Unlike the hurried passers-by, she didn't seem intimidated by the luxury of his car or his stressed appearance. Her hands bore traces of grease and dust, and her gaze was focused and confident. Jonathan, still frozen in front of the engine, didn't immediately know what to think. A simple passerby? A local mechanic? Little did he know that this encounter would change the course of his day, and perhaps even his entire view of wealth and appearances. As Jonathan nervously circled his car, inspecting the engine and sighing in frustration, the woman approached with a calm, confident stride. She wore simple clothes, jeans lightly stained with oil and a worn t-shirt, but her bearing exuded surprising confidence. "Hello," she said in a clear, calm voice, nodding slightly. "Can I take a look?" Jonathan stared at her, mouth agape. How dare she speak like that to a man like him, accustomed to everyone bowing to his status? A mixture of skepticism and curiosity washed over him. Yes. I guess," he stammered, hesitant. The woman smiled slightly, then crouched down in front of the engine. Her hands, already covered in grease, reached into the hood with an ease Jonathan had never seen before. Each movement was precise, methodical, and the woman seemed in no way impressed by the luxury of her car or its demanding owner. Jonathan stood there, watching her movements with fascination mixed with disbelief. The woman hadn't yet mentioned a specific technique or problem, but he immediately understood that she knew exactly what she was doing. "You look experienced," he said finally, unable to hide his astonishment. "You could say that," she replied simply, without looking up from the engine. At that moment, Jonathan began to understand that he was about to experience an unexpected encounter. He had just crossed paths with someone whose talent and determination surpassed anything he had imagined, and who, at first glance, seemed totally indifferent to his status or wealth. Claire opened the hood and placed her hands on the engine as if she knew every part by heart. Jonathan, arms crossed, watched her with a mixture of skepticism and budding admiration. He had never seen anyone work with such confidence and precision. "So, where do we start?" he asked, a little nervously. "First, we need to check the battery and the connections," she replied calmly, without looking up. In a few quick movements, she removed wires, adjusted contacts, and examined fuses. Her hands were deft, steady, each movement measured. Jonathan realized there was nothing he could do to help her, all he knew was how to write checks. "Impressive," he murmured, almost to himself. Claire finally looked up, meeting his gaze. A small but confident smile played on her lips. "Thanks, but it's nothing. It's just a little technique and a lot of concentration." Jonathan, accustomed to the world bowing to his money, felt for the first time this strange mixture of humility and fascination. This seemingly simple woman had just shown him that she possessed expertise he could never have bought. As she worked, Jonathan noticed her quick but deliberate decision-making, as if every move had been rehearsed hundreds of times before. And he realized, with a slight shudder, that he had met someone rare, someone whose talent was not dependent on wealth or social status. Claire continued to examine the engine with almost hypnotic concentration. Every movement of her hands was fluid, precise, as if choreographed. Jonathan watched her, fascinated, unable to look away. He was used to commanding and getting what he wanted immediately, but with her, he had no control. "You're really used to doing this, aren't you?" he asked, trying to hide his astonishment. "Let's just say I have a few years of experience," she replied, without arrogance. Jonathan felt a mixture of admiration and disbelief. This seemingly ordinary woman was mastering a complex engine with disconcerting ease. She was testing here, adjusting there, checking connections and levels with almost military rigor. Then, a small click sounded. Claire pressed a button, turned the key once more, and the car vibrated slightly, as if coming back to life. Jonathan held his breath. "It's perfect," he murmured. He realized it wasn't just the car she was fixing. It was his perception of people, wealth, and competence that was slowly shifting. The woman in front of him didn't need recognition or money to shine. All that mattered was her talent and determination. Jonathan realized he had just met someone who could surpass him, not in status or money, but in expertise and confidence. And this realization, although surprising, was beginning to shake his pride. After a few careful adjustments, Claire stepped back slightly, placed her hands on the edge of the hood, and simply said, "Try now." Jonathan, his heart pounding, turned the key. This time, the engine purred perfectly, powerful and steady, as if the car had never had a problem. He inhaled deeply, a mixture of relief and awe coursing through him. "Incredible," he breathed. "I don't know how you do it." Without thinking, he held out a note as a thank you, but Claire gently shook her head. "No, thank you. It's not necessary," she said calmly, her gaze still focused on the car. Jonathan froze, surprised by her modesty. In her world, everything had a price, but she had just shown him that there were things, talents, skills, that didn't sell. Then his gaze slid to his hand. There, on Claire's finger, shone a ring, a dazzling diamond that immediately caught his eye. Jonathan stopped dead in his tracks. This was no ordinary ring. He knew it. His heart raced. His whole world had just turned upside down. The simple, talented woman who had just saved his car wasn't the one he thought he'd meet. She had a secret, a status, an identity he'd never imagined. Jonathan blinked, unable to tear his eyes away from the glittering ring on Claire's finger. This was no mere ornament. The diamond and setting were of a rarity and value only an insider could recognize. His mind raced. How could this be possible? This woman, so modest in her appearance and so focused on the engine, wore a piece of jewelry that betrayed a prestigious inheritance, a wealth Jonathan had never dared to dream of. "This ring," he murmured, his voice trembling with astonishment. Claire, aware that he had noticed, smiled enigmatically. She said nothing, leaving Jonathan to guess what he had always ignored. The image he had of her, a simple mechanic, humble and discreet, had just been shattered. Jonathan felt a mixture of surprise, curiosity, and admiration. All his judgment of appearances had collapsed in a split second. This woman was much more than she let on. She was powerful, independent, and incredibly capable. For the first time in his life, Jonathan realized he'd underestimated someone. And that someone was showing him, without a word, that true wealth wasn't measured just in money or status, but in talent, confidence, and presence. Jonathan's heart was pounding. He stared at Claire, unable to tear his eyes away from the sparkling ring on her finger. And suddenly, the truth hit like a bolt of lightning. This woman was no ordinary passerby, nor an ordinary mechanic. She was the heiress to one of the city's largest fortunes, a woman Jonathan had thought unattainable for years. The shock paralyzed him. All his certainties about appearances and social status instantly collapsed. The woman he had seen as humble and simple had just saved his car and was carrying a symbol of power and wealth he knew well. You are, he began, unable to finish his sentence. Claire, still calm, gave a slight smile, a mixture of defiance and gentleness. She neither confirmed nor denied, but her bright gaze was enough to say it all. Jonathan understood that he had just met someone rare, someone who had complete control of their life and destiny, without ever needing to show it. For the first time, he felt a humility he'd never known. Everything he'd thought he knew about wealth, power, and competence had changed in an instant. This woman, standing before him, had just redefined what it truly meant to be impressive. Jonathan stood frozen, unable to move or speak. The woman before him, so modest and focused just a few minutes earlier, now revealed an aura of power and confidence that left him stunned. Every movement she had made on the engine, every word spoken with calm and assurance, suddenly took on an entirely different dimension. He realized he had been judging her appearance and her attire, her simple gestures, as if they defined her worth. And yet, this woman had just demonstrated that she could control not only a complex engine, but also the perception of others, with disconcerting discretion and elegance. The shock of the revelation took his breath away. He realized he had just met someone who possessed it all: intelligence, talent, independence, and now he knew she also had immense inherited wealth. Jonathan felt his world reel. How could I have been so wrong?" he muttered to himself. Claire gave a subtle, almost mischievous smile, aware of the effect she had just made. Without a word, she slung her bag over her shoulder and took a step toward the exit, leaving Jonathan alone, gaping in the middle of the road. He then understood that true power was not shown only by status or money, but by self-control, talent, and the ability to surprise others when they least expect it. Claire straightened up, picked up her bag, and took a few steps back. Before walking away, she turned around one last time. Her gaze met Jonathan's, and an enigmatic smile played on her lips. This smile was neither mocking nor arrogant, it was filled with confidence and mystery, as if she knew exactly what effect she had just had on him. Jonathan stood frozen, unable to move or speak. He watched her walk away, each light, purposeful step reinforcing the sense that this encounter had changed something in him. He had never met anyone who could combine competence, humility, and power in such a way. The road around him suddenly seemed silent. His car's engine still purred perfectly, but his entire world had shifted. Jonathan realized he had just witnessed a rare lesson: true greatness is not measured by wealth or status, but by how a person embraces their talent and identity, never trying to impress unnecessarily. Claire's smile remained etched in his mind, a powerful reminder that the world is always full of surprises, often where you least expect them. Jonathan stood there, his eyes fixed on where Claire had disappeared into the crowd. The car hummed smoothly behind him, but his mind was elsewhere. Everything he thought he knew about power, wealth, and appearances had just been called into question in just a few minutes. He thought of the ring, her precise movements, her unwavering calm. This woman, whom he had judged by her appearance, had just shown him that true greatness lies in talent, self-control, and quiet confidence. Everything he had considered impressive, money, status, luxury, suddenly seemed paltry compared to what he had just seen. A new feeling washed over him, humility. He realized he hadn't just met a mechanic or even a wealthy woman, but someone capable of redefining what it truly meant to impress others. Jonathan took a deep breath and whispered to himself. Sometimes true wealth is hidden where you least expect it. And as he climbed into his car, ready to hit the road again, he knew he would never look at the world the same way again. Meeting Claire would remain etched in his memory as a powerful reminder: never judge someone by appearances, because true power is often revealed in simplicity and talent.